this is how to use the AV stack properly. I've already covered how to use the mini DV deck to capture footage onto a computer. What happens on the computer itself, capturing using iMovie or Final Cut Pro or Premiere Pro or whatever you would like, it'd be best to take a workshop because it can get kind of hairy. You would also learn how to edit with those programs as well, so it's a great idea. Now, to use the analog, to use a VCR or the DVD player or one of these other devices here, the way you want to, depending on what you want to do, usually you want to capture, capture something like a cassette tape onto the computer. Now, the way you would do something like that is make sure all of the devices that you plan to use are on. Now, let's imagine for a moment that I want to use. Let's imagine for a moment that I want to use the monitor. So I want to see what's going on the VCR, and I'm going to turn this VCR on, VCR number 1. And I'm going to make sure that the capture device is on, and it is set to AV. There's a button on the top here. It says source, and I've set it to AV. This capture device can capture this footage into the computer. Now, there's a second way to capture as well, which is using the DV deck. And the way you do that is you set this to input. You set the input to video, and after you set the input to video, make sure there isn't a tape inside the deck itself, and then hit record. The record button will show you what's happening on the VCR. Now let's imagine for a moment that I'm trying to capture something from the tape, from a tape onto one of the computers. The way I would do that is make sure that the VCR is on, and the way this one works is that I just load this down, and I just put it in, and I can hit play so you can see what's going on. I turn on the monitor because the monitor needs to be on. Right now the monitor has to be set to line B, and you can hit normal if you're getting some weirdness there, and you can turn the volume down. So, and then after those devices are turned on and making sure that the capture device is set to AV using the source button on top, you turn on this router. This is a switcher. We call it the big switcher, the AV switcher. And the way this works is you can figure out these numbers here correspond to the outputs, and the outputs are all labeled. So the way you use this is by selecting the output you want to use. Let's say monitor, which is number 1, and you can see that the light is blinking. The first one is blinking, and I will set it to VCR 1, number 4. And if I hit play, it'll show up here. At the same time, if I want to get audio out of it, I have two options. I can either turn it up on the monitor, or I can also use these speakers that we have up there by pressing number 7. Oh, sorry, by pressing number 7 and choosing the input VCR 1. So if I turn this on now, I get the sound. In the same way, I can set the capture device, which is output number 6, to VCR number 1, which is number 4. And this way, if you're doing just one thing, a quick way is selecting all, pressing the all button, and they're all blinking, and just setting them all to VCR 1. And now it's being outputted to everything. Capture device, DV deck, it's just very quick that way. If you're dubbing a tape onto another tape, or you're copying a tape or whatever, you can select VCR 1 and VCR 2 to be outputs and inputs to each other, depending on which tape you want to be the recording tape. You might want to play around with this. This takes a little bit of getting used to. Make sure that this is AFV, not video or audio, that's on. AFV here. And you can also turn all of, so you can just use these outputs and these inputs to show whatever, to do a whole bunch of very cool things. This thing is awesome.